James was finding life difficult. Ever since he had caused a mess in the yards, he had been relegated to shunting around from Nafford Yards to Nafford Station, and only took trains when absolutely needed. Needless to say, he was growing restless. It's ridiculous. I've been stuck in yard territory doing the same thing for nearly 2 weeks. Me, James the Red Engine, banished from the outside world and having other engines cover my jobs. Disgusting. I wonder why. Perhaps, James, you could express your thoughts about your schedule to the Fat Controller, maybe without the theatrics, though. James, still stuck on his past mistake, decided to get back to work without fuss. That's James for you. Despite his temper not improving, James did surprisingly well when handling the yard work. He didn't lose his patience with the trucks and carefully arranged batches of trains in good time. The other engines were pleasantly surprised and thanked him for his assistance. By the end of the day, James was feeling pleased with himself as he completed the last of his work. Time to go home, James. We made great progress today. Now it's time for a well-earned rest. So, how was it playing Common Tank Engine today, James? I heard that. Well, it was more productive than sitting around boasting all day, if you ask me. Well, you don't see me scurrying around sidings making a fuss about everything. I rumble down the center of the longest line of the island, letting everyone know my presence and transporting people from here to there, on time, if I may add. Yeah, well, nobody was asking. All right, I think that's enough debate for one day. We all best get some rest. Typical express engines. Hush. Next morning, James was surprisingly given an abnormal assignment from the yardmaster. Ah, yes, James. You're needed to take an urgent train out to the other end of the line. Be quick, will you? You'll find the rolling stock in siding 6. Certainly, sir. I expect it's a passenger train, right? No. Come again? Ugh, disgraceful. It's the first train I've taken all week, and it's a dirty old goods train. Anyone would think I've done something wrong. Oh, right. Although he was accompanied yet again by trucks, James made good time as he snorted down the line, ready to get the job over with. Patience, James. We're in no hurry. Well, it'd be better if we were. It wasn't long until they had to stop for a red signal at the junction. Thomas was already there. Hello, James. Enjoying your day, I see? Oh, ha ha, very funny. Then, James noticed an empty line of trucks sitting in one of the sidings. Would you happen to know where those are meant to go? Oh, those? Vickerstown, I believe. I'm supposed to take those later this afternoon. I can take them. Are you sure? Indeed. This'll prove my reliability. And so the arrangements were made. Now you see, James's plan was to prove that he can handle trucks and taking trains in general. However, he wouldn't have known about the insecure coupling on the first of the recently added trucks. The movement of the train, plus the pace James was going, would only lead to trouble. They were just going around the tight bends near the cow fields when... What was... Oh dear, oh dear. Luckily for James, he wasn't far from the next station and the trucks hadn't planned any trouble for him on the journey. He was flagged down at the next station where a curious station master was waiting. What do you all think you're playing at? Pardon me, sir, but whatever do you mean? We agreed to take the longer load with the men at Ellsbridge. Well, perhaps you'd best take a look at the end of your train. Why, bless me, a coupling must have snapped or something. Can you give us a clear line? Already done. Be quick now. There might still be upcoming traffic. And to think I thought this would be a nice trip. By the time James had reached the back part of his train, he had a surprise awaiting him. Behind his train was Molly, patiently waiting with a passenger train. So these were your trucks, I assume? Sorry about that. No harm done, unless you count a rough stop a little while ago. James moved on with the rest of his train coupled back on. Molly began to follow suit until... Ow! What was that? Are you alright, Molly? Yeah, that did hurt. A little too much for my liking. You'd think they'd start moving. Oh, what is it now? I spotted Molly having trouble starting up again. I suggest we see what's wrong. And so they did, and the two trains waited after a while of inspection. Well, you've probably broken something inside you with that quick stop. Well, that's torn it. You lads think you can give us a tow to the next station? Oh, of course. We just hope James will understand. And indeed, he did. Oh, the Fat Controller will have my tender now for this. With James's already long train, plus Molly and her train, it was no easy job pulling away for James. And he had to stop a far distance from the platform so Molly's passengers could be let out. And then they waited for their next move. Anxious passengers began making their voices heard. At last, both crews and the guard informed their engines and customers. Molly's crew will keep the brakes off, and we'll rearrange our lot behind the coaches. What? Me? Pulling two trains and an engine? I'll shake myself to bits. Oh, lighten up, James. We have no spare engines to cover Molly's train, and the timetable's been altered, so we'll have to keep it. Besides, we'll drop Molly off at the workstation, and her train terminates there. Well, I'm no Henry, but I'll try my best. That's the spirit, boy! Now let's get ready. James had filled up on coal and water and began tugging his way out of the station. Come on, get moving, get moving, get moving. The train remained moving at a steady pace, but James soon found that he couldn't make up much time. They began to slowly but surely pick up speed as they approached Edward Station. James was grateful that they didn't have to stop here. All right, hold steady, James. We haven't got anyone to bank us this time. How reassuring. Regardless, Molly and her crew tried the best they could to help keep the train moving without risking any more damage. The top of the hill became closer and closer. James's wheels began to slip and coupling strained, but James was having none of it. With a sigh of relief, they crested the top of the hill, but the worst was yet to come. As they descended, James felt something loose on his wheels. It sounded like odd rattling. You hear that, driver? Oh, now I do. Oh boy. We'll try and look for any problems at Marin. Gently braking, the train slowed into the next station. Right before James stopped, a fairly loud clank sounded out. That's not good. It was no challenge spotting the issue. Well, blimey, you are on the verge of snapping a crank pin. So far, your right side rod's rattled some bolts loose and has come off halfway. Thank goodness we weren't at a higher speed, or you'd end up like Edward. James shuddered at the thought. Oh, well, I'll try and see if we can find a replacement. That won't be needed. What? What? Well, you did say I almost ended up like Edward, so why not take my side rod off and let me continue? I mean, I suppose it's worth a try, but you'll have to work hard and be cautious if we're to make it there. And so the preparations began, with James's right side rod being removed and curious passengers overlooking from the carriage windows. In short time, everything was ready. Are you sure about this, James? Not entirely, but we haven't got any other real choices. Now let's get this moving. With only minor wheel slip, the train gently exited the platform, bound for the workstation. James's driver was right. It was hard work. James had to literally work twice as hard for each puff and was really feeling the weight of the contest now. Go on, James! We're making good progress! To James, it had seemed like ages before they even passed through the next station, but they were indeed succeeding so far. As hard as James was trying, he was cutting it close with the altered schedule, so adjustments were made from box to box across the main line. About time. What's this I see? Is that? Well, well. Even the trucks, who would normally cause trouble, were impressed by how well James was coping. James was glad when they stopped at Kelsthorpe and gulped down on water. Nearly there, old boy. The next station is it. Then we're done. How delightful. Whew. By the time James was out of sight from the station, word had traveled up the line, and crews and engines alike were aware of James's adventure. James usually couldn't respond due to his concentration, but tried to give a reassuring smile. Time had passed and a crowd had gathered at Crovan's gate, wondering how long James and Molly would take. Everyone was sure that James would bring the contest into the station in fine style. However, James was struggling greatly. He was about to give up out of desperation when he remembered one thing. That's it. Molly, try accelerating a little bit when we dip slightly downhill. It'll help boost us to the next station. Right, and keep the brakes off. Alright. 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 And now! Ooh, there they are! Engines and people alike cheered as James and Molly glided past the yards and sheds in grand style. Tired but determined, James made sure the train braked perfectly into the platform and stopped with one last cloud of smoke. Well done, James! You did it! Not bad, youngster. Bravo, James! Aye, well, that's something you didn't see every day. Hooray for James! James was so pleased that he didn't know what to say. Smile and whistle, James. Smile and whistle. After the commotion had died down, Molly's passengers personally thanked the engines for their efforts as both their coaches and trucks were shunted away. Well, after that, I'm definitely going to need a new coat of paint? Well, I was thinking of repairs, but that too. Later on, as James was resting, Henry and Gordon came up to take away the unneeded coaches and trucks. How on earth did you pull that one off, James? I must say, you were splendid. Yes, not bad considering the situation. Well, you could say I had the right valve gear to keep standing. Guess some strengths aren't reliant on one size, eh, Gordon? And as James was towed away, Henry and Gordon could do nothing but stare in amazement.